On the evening of October 1st, 2024, about 200 missiles were launched from Iran towards several air bases and Mossad headquarters in Israel. This marked the second direct missile attack by the Islamic Republic of Iran on Israel. And for the first time, Iran used its hypersonic Fado missiles in this attack, which reportedly managed to breach Israel's strong missile defense system. Several weeks later, Israel carried out a retaliatory operation targeting several Iranian military bases using its fighter jets. Although both sides claim that these attacks did not result in significant casualties, this exchange of fire could mark the beginning of a major shift in the tense situation in the Middle East. The history between these two countries, however, is incredibly complex and intertwined, with deep cultural and political ties. To understand it better, we need to go back to the early years of Israel's formation, back to the period between the two world wars when Zionists were working hard to secure Israel's place in the predominantly Arab and Muslim Middle East. Representatives of the Zionists wanted to encourage Iranian Jews to immigrate to the land of Palestine, but despite being a religious minority in Iran, they were relatively well off and had little desire to leave. With the onset of World War II and the Holocaust, many Jews fled Europe for the Middle East and even Iran, while the idea of an independent Israel gained traction among both the global community and Jewish people themselves. After Iran was occupied by the Allies and Mohammad Reza Pahlavi came to power as the Shah of Iran, the Jewish Agency was given official permission to operate in Iran. This, coupled with Iran's relatively unstable condition, sparked the beginning of a wave of Jewish immigration from Iran to Israel. After the Allies left Iranian lands, this country's diplomacy in global forums stood in opposition to Zionist policies. In 1947, Iran was elected to the Special Committee on Palestine at the United Nations and was one of the three countries that opposed the formation of an independent Israeli state. Iran even voted against the plan to partition Palestine between Jews and Muslims. Iran's proposal was to establish a single but federal state called Palestine. After Israel was officially recognized, war broke out between Jews and Arabs, leading to even stronger stances against Israel from the people and politicians of the Middle East. At this time, the Iranian government, seeking the return of property for Iranian refugees in Palestine and their safe return, held its first diplomatic negotiations with the Israeli government. Abbas Sikel was appointed as the first consular representative to manage these matters. Following Mohammad Reza Pahlavi's first official trip to the United States and his meeting with President Harry Truman, the issue of Iran-Israel relations was taken seriously. Consequently, Nasrallah Entezm, Iran's representative to the United Nations, informed Abba Eban, Israel's representative, that Iran had recognized Israel as de facto. Iran became the second Muslim country, after Turkey, to recognize Israel. Domestically, this decision was kept relatively secret, but despite some opposition, economic and trade relations began between the two countries, including the export of agricultural products to Israel. Clerics in Iran like Said Abulghazem Kashani strongly opposed this. The then government of Mohammad Mossadegh was forced to close Iran's consulate in Israel, citing financial problems as the reason. Despite this, Iran-Israel economic and trade relations continued to grow, eventually leading to Iranian oil exports to Israel and the purchase of modern weapons and military equipment from Israel. Israeli representatives in Iran proposed the idea of stronger security ties between the two countries, and Mossad agents, with their extensive intelligence and security experience, took on the training of part of Iran's newly established Savak intelligence service. This further strengthened the political and security ties between the two countries, although these relations were kept secret out of fear of public reaction. In 1960, Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi himself publicly acknowledged Israel's recognition by Iran, which provoked a strong response, especially from Arab countries. Egypt withdrew its ambassador from Iran, and the Arab League imposed widespread sanctions on Iran. Iran leveraged the situation to move closer to the United States while expanding military cooperation and arms imports from Israel. However, a large portion of the Iranian public, religious leaders, and even many intellectuals opposed Iran's increasingly close ties with Israel, and these relations became one of the reasons for growing internal opposition to the Shah's regime. After Israel's six-day war with the Arab countries and the crushing defeat of the Arabs, anti-Israeli sentiments spread widely among the Iranian people. During a football match between Iran and Israel in Tehran, anti-Israeli protests peaked, leading to tensions throughout the game. Nonetheless, trade relations between the two countries continued to grow, and Iran became Israel's primary oil supplier. Iran and Israel, along with the Kurds in Iraq who were fighting against the Ba'athist regime, formed an unofficial military alliance against Arab nationalism in most Arab countries. After the death of Jamal Abdel Nasser, the leader of Arab nationalism in the Middle East, Anwar Sadat was elected president of Egypt. He had a more moderate stance towards both Israel and the Pahlavi regime in Iran and gradually developed a friendly relationship with the Shah, leading to improved and normalized relations between Iran and Arab countries. In 1973, Egypt and Syria, with the backing of Arab countries, launched a surprise attack against Israeli positions. This operation, known as Yom Kippur, inflicted significant damage on Israel, despite the Israeli army's resistance. Israel retaliated by bombing areas in Egypt and Syria, and with U.S. assistance, managed to prevent further attacks. At this time, Arab countries and OPEC decided to impose an oil embargo on the U.S. and raise oil prices, hoping to use their oil reserves against Israel and its supporters. The Shah of Iran, standing alongside the Arab countries and OPEC, did not oppose the oil price hike, and at the same time, he began making harsh public criticisms of Israel. Although he did not stop oil exports to Israel, the Shah took full advantage of the situation by raising the price of Iranian oil exports, which drew more and more criticism from Western countries. As Iran's relations with Arab countries, especially Egypt, continued to improve, the Shah also made efforts to resolve the disputes with Iraq, leading to the signing of the 1975 Algiers Accord. Day by day, the Shah moved closer to the Arab states, raising alarms for Israel and its Western allies. Meanwhile, the seeds of the revolution in Iran were becoming more apparent, and much of the Iranian public, particularly the clergy, criticized the Shah for his cooperation with Israel. The pressure on Mohammad Reza Shah from both the West and the revolutionary people at home grew tighter by the day. Some of the Shah's critics and armed rebels made their way to Palestine and Lebanon, where they joined forces with the Palestinian Liberation Organization, PLO, and the Amal movement in Lebanon, engaging in armed struggle against the Israelis while learning guerrilla warfare tactics. The slogan "Death to Israel" gradually became one of the main slogans of the Iranian revolutionaries, and after the revolution succeeded in February 1979, this slogan became a central political stance of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Despite the religious differences between Iran's Shia population and the Sunni Palestinians, Iran's revolutionary leaders took a firm stance against Israel from the very beginning. The first foreign guest of the revolution was none other than Yasser Arafat, the leader of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, who secured a promise from the Iranians that they would not sell oil to Israel. The Israeli consulate in Iran, which had been destroyed by the revolutionaries, was handed over to Yasser Arafat as the first Palestinian embassy in Tehran. 2 years after the Islamic Revolution, Iraq's Ba'athist regime, led by Saddam Hussein, violated prior agreements and launched an attack on Iran. The Iran-Iraq War put the Palestinians, especially the PLO and Yasser Arafat, in a difficult position. On one hand, they valued the support of a country like Iran, but on the other hand, they saw Saddam Hussein as the leader of the Arab world and their main political backer. After Arafat's initial attempts to mediate between Iraq and Iran failed, Arafat, the PLO, and most Palestinians chose to support Iraq and Saddam Hussein. Meanwhile, in 1982, during the Lebanese Civil War, the Israeli army launched a major invasion of Lebanon. Some Iranian forces wanted to get involved directly, but were stopped by Ayatollah Khomeini. Instead, Iran focused on supporting the Shia factions in Lebanon, helping to establish Hezbollah, and providing military training. Over time, Hezbollah and Iran-backed groups gained significant control in Lebanon and gradually distanced themselves from the PLO. It seems that after this, the various countries in the Middle East and different groups began to split over the issue of Palestine and how to deal with Israel. The PLO, under Arafat's leadership, gradually softened its stance on Israel's existence and sought ways to legitimize the state of Palestine and establish peace in the region. This shift, along with the PLO's support for groups opposed to the Islamic Republic and Arafat's meetings with leaders of the Mojahedin Khalq organization, which had become sworn enemies of the Islamic Republic, led to a deepening rift between the PLO and the Iranian government. Eventually, in 1993, Yasser Arafat officially recognized Israel and signed the Oslo Accords with Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin. This agreement laid the foundation for the recognition of an independent Palestinian state and the establishment of long-term peace. Ayatollah Khamenei, the leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran, harshly criticized the agreement, calling it an Israeli ploy. Iran's stance towards Israel gradually became more uncompromising, refusing to recognize Israel in any way, even in international sports competitions. This hardline position took an even more extreme turn after 2005, when Mahmoud Ahmadinejad came to power. His statements against Israel and sometimes even against the Holocaust stirred harsh reactions against Iran, leading to more severe international sanctions on Iran, especially over its nuclear activities. On the other hand, Israel used these remarks to play the victim in international forums, speaking of its precarious situation in the Middle East and deflecting UN condemnations directed at it. Meanwhile, the Palestinian Islamic resistance movement, known as Hamas, was gradually rising to leadership in the Palestinian struggle. Unlike the secular PLO, which had taken a more moderate approach, Hamas was committed to armed resistance and refused to recognize Israel. Although Hamas received substantial support from Arab countries, it gradually aligned itself with the Islamic Republic of Iran, which provided it with significant backing. As Iran's nuclear program advanced, Israel claimed that Iran sought to develop a nuclear bomb to assert its power in the region. Over the past 2 decades, several Iranian nuclear scientists and officials have been assassinated inside Iran, and there have been several cyber attacks on Iran's nuclear program, all of which Iranian authorities blame on Israel. Additionally, some intelligence sources and documents related to Iran's nuclear program have been provided to Israeli officials. In response, Iran has focused on expanding its military capabilities, particularly its arsenal of long-range ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and drones, in an effort to maintain a balance of power with Israel and other regional countries. Iran has also responded by supporting groups known as the Resistance in Iraq, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and Hamas, aiming to place Israel in a difficult regional situation. Hamas has launched several irregular attacks and wars against Israel, particularly in the Gaza Strip, but has faced harsh retaliations, with Israel bombing many areas in Gaza. On October 7, 2023, Hamas launched a surprise attack called Al-Aqsa Storm on Israeli settlements. This attack ignited larger conflicts and reignited simmering tensions in the Middle East. Arab countries, many of which were on the verge of establishing diplomatic relations with Israel, condemned Israel's severe bombardment of Gaza following October 7th and took strong stances against Israel. The Islamic Republic of Iran, more than any Arab country, openly declared its support for Hamas and its resistance. Hezbollah in Lebanon, which is supported and openly led by Iran, launched numerous missile and rocket attacks on Israeli positions. Some Western sources believe Iran also has significant influence over the Houthis in Yemen, who have launched several missile and drone attacks on Israel, as well as Israeli and Western ships in the Red Sea over the past year. Israel has not left these attacks unanswered. Alongside its war with Hamas in Gaza, Israel has bombed Hezbollah positions in Lebanon multiple times. On April 1, 2024, the Israeli Air Force attacked a building near the Iranian embassy in Damascus, killing several senior Iranian Revolutionary Guard commanders, including Mohammad Reza Zahedi. The Iranian military, which had refrained from direct military attacks on Israeli soil for years, responded on April 13, 2024, by launching its first missile and drone strike on Israeli soil in what it called Operation Promised Truth. Approximately 300 missiles and drones were used in this attack, and according to Western news agencies, a large portion of them were intercepted by Israeli and American defense systems, albeit at a significantly higher cost. Some Iranian officials claimed that the primary goal of this attack was deterrence, and that's why they avoided targeting infrastructure or using Iran's most advanced missiles. A week after this attack, various media outlets reported small explosions near Isfahan, close to Iran's air defense facilities, which were unofficially attributed to Israeli fighter jets firing missiles from outside Iran's borders. Most experts believe this limited attack was meant to send a message to Iran about Israel's capabilities without escalating the conflict further. However, after this exchange of fire, Israel significantly ramped up its attacks on Hezbollah positions in Lebanon, targeting both Hezbollah's weapons caches and assassinating senior commanders. Meanwhile, Iran's president and foreign minister have died in an air crash within Iran. After elections were held and Masoud Pezeshkian was inaugurated as the new president, Ismail Haniyeh, a leader of Hamas who had been invited as a guest to the inauguration, was killed by a rocket or bomb explosion at his residence. Most Iranian media and officials blamed Israel for this assassination and vowed severe retaliation against Israel. Nevertheless, Israel continued to intensify its attacks on Hezbollah positions in Lebanon. On September 27, 2024, in a major airstrike by the Israeli Air Force on Hezbollah's command center in southern Beirut, Hassan Nasrallah, the Secretary General of Hezbollah, and Abbas Nofershin, a senior commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, along with several other commanders, were killed. This devastating attack severely weakened Hezbollah's defensive structure and, given the media pressure on Iran to deliver a strong response, led to Iran launching 200 advanced missiles against targets inside Israel on the night of October 1, 2024. Following this large-scale attack, Israeli officials continually spoke of retaliation and conducting significant operations against Iran. However, after several weeks of diplomatic negotiations between Israel, the United States, Middle Eastern countries, and Iran, Israeli air forces carried out a limited airstrike on Iran on the first hours of October 26, 2024. According to the Israeli military, around 100 fighter jets were used to target certain Iranian defense and missile sites. It appears that Israel aimed to lower tensions with Iran through this attack, but Iran's response and future developments will determine the nature of the conflict between the two countries. This tension has the potential to lead to significant events across the Middle East and even globally, drawing the attention of many to the unfolding dynamics between Iran and Israel.